First off, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. We're all busy in the creator space. So first off, just a big thank you to you for taking the time to do this today.
No, of course. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
I'm excited to get into all things YouTube, marketing, certainly learning, and a lot of the things that you share online, businesses you're building, stuff like that. But I'm on this kick right now of asking a pretty open-ended, fun question. And that's, if we were to create the best podcast episode that you've ever been a part of, what do you think we would have to do today to accomplish that?
Ooh, that's a pretty good question. Well, it seems like you're already pretty good at asking questions, so I think it should not be hard for that to happen. But it will have to be something that does combine all the things I'm passionate about. So that means YouTube, as well as business, as well as in general marketing.
I think those are pretty powerful topics, all three of them. So rather than just starting on one of those, though, when we have such overarching things that we're involved in and passionate about, one of the things that can get so difficult in the social media or online business space is like spreading ourselves too thin. So since you have so many interests, I'd love to talk about something that I've been hearing a lot of recently because of Cal Newport's new book, Slow Productivity, meaning that we're still very productive and we still get a lot done, but that we're able to focus. How are you able to focus when you have really big overarching interests?
I try to find ways to, and Alex Hormozy talks about this a lot, which is you work in seasons. Even Dan Coe has started talking about this. You work in seasons. So there are certain times of my life. There are, let's say, a quarter, like Q4 2023, I was focusing more on business. Just learning more about the business aspects of things and catching up on things that are happening in that space, and just reading more books about entrepreneurship and about just general sales and even psychology and things like that. Whereas Q1 of 2024, I was more focused on YouTube because I realized that I was starting to lag behind and people were getting ahead of me and they knew things that I didn't. So I just spent some time to catch up there. So I believe that there is no way to balance things in the micro, but in the macro, you have to pay attention to a certain thing at once so that over a period of time, you're still paying attention to multiple things. Just you're not trying to balance on a daily basis those things.
Yeah, the argument in the book, the one thing is there's no such thing as balance for entrepreneurs, that we can only do counterbalance in that we need to go crazy focused on something for a period of time and then allow it to swing back to the other thing. But at any given moment, you have that hyper focused thing. So let's start there for you right now. When it comes to that main thing, you mentioned YouTube being how you started 2024. Is that where your primary focus is right now as well?
No, so Q2, I've switched more towards business. 2.5 or 3 years ago, I started diving into the business space. So before that, I was a creator completely. Until I was in college, I was a full-time, not full-time, but like my whole dedication was just towards creating content. And then I realized that I was struggling with revenue certain months, so I started to switch towards being a freelancer for a couple of months, and then eventually I started an agency. And so over the last 2 years, that was always something that I was focusing on a day-to-day basis, because it combined everything I enjoyed, which is business, YouTube, and marketing in general. And so I was running a YouTube agency. And over the last couple months, I have switched my focus from it being a YouTube only agency to developing it to become a general social media marketing agency, but still prioritizing video content and helping businesses that are more traditional in nature, that are struggling with just figuring out the online space and helping them get the reach and eventually the customers that they want.
So if someone were thinking of starting a YouTube channel right now, knowing what you went through and then finding it a bit hard in terms of revenue some months, what would be your advice for someone? Let's say they're 20 years old, they're in college, but they want to start a YouTube channel to see if they could maybe do that instead of a traditional career. What would your advice be to someone like that?
Well, I would say you got to really spend time to think where you want to go and how much money you want to make. Because let's say you're somebody who's satisfied with $3,000-4,000 a month, you can really do anything and you'll easily be able to make that much, as long as you're doing something that has a wide enough appeal. Whereas if you're somebody who already has some skills, some experience, maybe you've worked for a couple years for your dad who has a shop, you know something. When you know a little bit of something, whatever it is, it's better for you to focus on just talking about that thing and figuring out a way to be able to sell it. So even if you don't have a massive audience, you're able to make money consistently because there are people who are willing to pay you for your knowledge and experience.
And when you say that, people willing to pay for knowledge, experience, do you find that that would typically be freelancing, or would it be packaging it in a course, or a combination of both of those, or something else that I didn't mention?
Well, really anything works, but the thing I've seen working best for YouTubers is when you're really small, you start with freelancing because it's more exclusive, it's one-to-one, you're providing a lot of value. And then you slowly, when you just cannot keep up with, working with everybody who wants to work with you, then you start packaging it into, cheaper alternatives, essentially. So courses or group coaching or masterminds or maybe an ebook,
Yeah, I personally so far am taking a somewhat pre-internet route online though, because just creating the content itself and then writing a book right now, things like that, a lot of semi-traditional means in a more modern way, because we have a lot of opportunities with self-publishing and stuff like that. But that's why I love bringing experts on the show who have tried freelancing, who have created agencies, who have done some coaching, who has worked with people who have packaged courses, and kind of like remove some of the myths around that, or just make it easier for people. Because we do hear a lot that people who start just YouTube without really an understanding of how to make money struggle with paying the bills, and that it really impacts the creative piece. It's this weird challenge and tension between the two that can be difficult and kind of sad, because people then stop creating. So you'll see some solutions like Patreon, maybe that works for someone, and all these different options. And so it's just kind of fun to talk through them. When you first started freelancing, to go back to that, because you mentioned that being your first step as well for revenue, what were you freelancing in?
So I was doing video editing for creators, and I realized that I did always have the knack for business when I look back at this. So this is pre me studying business or entrepreneurship. This is 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. I was still in college in my last year, and I just wanted to make consistent money, even if it was $1,000 or $2,000 a month. And what I did was, I did something pretty smart. Instead of just going to every YouTuber out there and just trying to edit for them, I went to people who I knew were busy and whose focus wasn't YouTube, but they would really make more money if they started YouTube, or if they just paid attention to YouTube. So this was people who were streaming on Twitch. So they were full-time streamers who were already making a certain amount of money, had a certain number of followers, but their YouTube channels were not doing too well. And I knew these were people who would definitely be interested in YouTube, because anybody who starts watching YouTube can then go onto their Twitch streams and start donating them, start joining the communities. And so My first client was actually a WWE wrestler. And I didn't know that until he paid me. So that's pretty funny. It's Adam Cole, former NXT wrestler, and now he's part of the AEW, and he's still a client. I just don't do the editing myself anymore. So that was the first step actually to me becoming an agency, which is just outsourcing that editing work. But I started with editing, and then after a month or so, he was like, you know what, I think you should just handle the whole channel. And then I just completely started managing that channel. I got a couple more freelancing clients where I was not just doing the editing, but I was also consulting them, or for some of them I was just completely managing their YouTube channels.
Yeah, that's something that someone like that, getting it off their plate, I'm sure would be really helpful to them, which is maybe that's one of those first key tips for people in business, is find people you can take stuff who would gladly have it off their plate. But you also clearly did a good job of it if he wanted to essentially upgrade what he was involving you in by saying just take over the whole channel. So aside from him being busy, what do you think you were doing that created that opportunity?
Well, first of all, the way that I got hired is he hadn't uploaded a video for a month. And honestly, so how it all happened is I made a list of 85 Twitch streamers who had at least 10,000 followers or more. And they were all struggling with their YouTube channels, which is either their videos were just not good enough or they were not getting a lot of views. And so what I did was I reached out to each of them individually via email. Most of them didn't reply, as it always goes with cold emailing people. But he was the only one I couldn't find a contact number for, or a contact email for. And so after reaching out to everybody and after a week of not being able to sign any of them, I tried to give it a go and try to find him elsewhere. And I found him on Twitter, but DMs weren't open. But he also had a Discord channel, a Discord server. And so what I did was I entered the server and I just started looking at, maybe trying to figure out who is currently working on his channel. Is he doing it himself? Is somebody else doing it? And then I DM'd him. And so what I did there was I DM'd him and said, I'll do a video for you for free. If you like it, you can then pay me. And so I put a lot of effort in that video up front, and I had promised him I'm only going to do a 1 to 2 minute video, but I ended up doing a 7-minute video, and I condensed a 4-hour long live stream that he had made into a 7-minute YouTube video. And so when he saw that, he was like, tell me your PayPal, I'm going to pay you right now for the next whole month and let's get started. And so
Wow.
that upfront value, I think, is very important, especially when you're just starting out. Nobody trusts you. Nobody believes in you when you are a nobody, when you have nothing to show for yourself. And so putting in that work, going the extra mile, I think is really important in the beginning for you to sign your first couple of clients, and don't expect to be paid too much.
Those are really helpful examples and advice to people, even though it's embedded in a pretty awesome story. Let's just stick for that for a second. I'd like to ask a couple other questions about it. How, once you decided, and I guess he decided to keep you on for, and let's go for another month for now, how many videos did you need to do the next month? Like, because obviously that was different than that first one that you had planned for 2 minutes that turned into 7. What was the plan for the next month?
So I had proposed to him to do 1 video a week, because he was also streaming like 2 or 3 times a week. And I didn't have the bandwidth because I was still in college to be able to do more than that. So I just proposed to him, let's start with 1. And that's still the schedule that we've stuck to for the last 3 years now. So it's clearly working. So we started with 1 a week, and it would take me about 16 to 18 hours to get 1 video done. But I really enjoyed the video, so to me it didn't feel like work, because it was just like me editing my own YouTube videos, which I used to do before. And I was getting paid handsomely for it. It was about $150 per video. And for me, as somebody who was still in college, that was pretty good for just something I could get done in a weekend.
And those are the examples. It's funny because I didn't want to ask more than one question at a time. As I've improved as an interviewer, I know and as I've done more interviews myself, I know that's a super annoying thing to have like multiple questions. But what's so funny is I was going to ask what the plan was for the next month, how much he was originally streaming, and if you minded sharing how much you were paid in that first month. And so you already answered all three. Thank you so much for going ahead and doing that, because I think it really gives people who might be thinking of freelancing, whether it's editing podcasts, creating stills and like visual art content or doodles, or it could be editing videos or anything like that, making music for people, anything in that freelancing space. Writing blogs is probably one of the most common that you see, or writing newsletters, things of that nature. So I did interview Alex Fasulo. Her brand since has been the Freelance Fairy on a previous episode of the show. And so we went pretty deep into freelancing, given that that's what her book is about and all these kinds of things. But I think hearing different examples from everyone really helps, because that is definitely something that anyone could have a skill at pretty quickly to freelance in. I mean, there's just so many options. Do you ever recommend that people get onto something like Fiverr, or did you ever consider that, or were you just about, trying to do the grassroots reach out yourself?
Well, for me, it was important to get on a project that I enjoyed. And so I never considered Fiverr for that reason, because I was happy just having 2 or 3 clients who I really enjoy making videos for. So it doesn't feel like a chore, because the reason I also stopped doing YouTube for myself back in the day was because there came a point where I stopped enjoying it, because I got stuck in a niche that didn't allow me to pursue creative styles of content that I wanted to. And so I never wanted to do that again. I never wanted to get stuck and feel stuck, because there's nothing worse than getting burnt out because you're not allowed to express yourself creatively. And so I think that was extremely important, that I chose who I wanted to work with.
I just interviewed April Lynn Alter, who had a very similar experience. She started creating YouTube videos in the NFT space and then felt so trapped in a niche, and she couldn't decide how to get out of it, and ultimately came to the decision of starting a new channel and building from scratch. In terms of your own experience, what was the niche that you found yourself in that you felt trapped in?
So I was making mobile gaming videos, but I stuck to one particular game. When I had started YouTube in 2014, yeah. I was 14 years old, and I just wanted to be PewDiePie, but on mobile. And so I didn't have a PC, I didn't have a gaming console. All I just had was my phone. I didn't have a webcam, nothing of that sort. All I had was my phone. So I used to do everything on that one phone. And it was a fake Galaxy Note 2. A fake one, yeah, mind you. So it had like 8 gigs of storage. And what I used to do was I used to download random games off the Play Store that just looked wacky as fuck. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, okay. That just looked really wacky, and I used to review them, and I used to record that footage all from my mobile, and then I had to delete the game because I didn't have enough storage to then edit the video on the same mobile. So I would delete the game, edit the video, and I would just do that every few days. I would just do that. Like after school, I would just get home, find a random game, play it, and upload videos. But then I got sucked into the FIFA mobile niche. So FIFA, the football game, right, is pretty popular. And because I didn't have a console, I used to just play the mobile version. And I grew up in the Middle East where FIFA was really popular. So all of my friends used to play FIFA, and I just got sucked into that niche. And I enjoyed it for a while. But after 6 years of just doing FIFA mobile gaming content, I was pretty stuck. I think it was around when I had hit 40,000 subscribers that I really started to feel the burn, because I wanted to try more creative videos in the same niche. But every time I would do those, I would get lesser views, and people would say, no, I just want to see this particular kind of content that you've been making. And I still tried, I would stick to those videos again. And then every couple of months, I would be like, you know what, I want to try something new. And then I would try it, and I would spend a lot more effort and time into it, but I just wouldn't get views. I would make no money from those videos, and people would just not enjoy the content as much as I thought they would. But there were those people who used to really enjoy it, but it was a very small number. And so I was starting to get burnt out. I switched to streaming on Twitch for a while, and that was fun. But then just some things happened there. There was some drama that happened in the space, and then I just stopped doing that completely, and I gave up. And then the last straw was when I decided I'm not going to make a FIFA mobile video. I tried to do this. So Cyberpunk had just come out on console. It's a pretty popular game. Keanu Reeves is in it. And I decided to try to find a rip-off mobile version of the game and review it. And I spent a whole month editing that video. 4 hours a day for a whole month. I was editing that video. I spent at least 300 to 400 hours on editing that one video. And it completely flopped. And for me, that was the last straw. And I was just like, this is not worth it. I made $2 off of that whole month of effort. And so that's when I decided I'm just gonna, for now, kill my own YouTube career and instead help other people build theirs.
Which is such a common occurrence. I think two examples that come to mind as well are writing, where people want to be the next author of a massive book like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, or Harry Potter, the Go Fiction World, Hunger Games, and recognizing that it's hard. And in the music world, that's so common. I have a lot of friends who are extremely talented musicians. They toured bars. They maybe even did their own tours a little bit, but then eventually they go back to teaching lessons because that's just, what for them at this time, they're able to see a clear path to revenue and to monetization and whatnot. And for those of us, yourself and me and many others who, well, I don't know about your situation, but at least in mine, for sure, we have to find a way to make money and pay the bills. We're not, in my case, I'm not coming from money, so it's not like I can just choose to be creative. And these are the people that I want to help the most. I heard Chris Lockhead and Lenny Rachitsky on a podcast episode a few weeks back talking about the fact that the best entrepreneurs have a problem that drives them so crazy that they can't stop thinking about it. And for me, that problem, and I might take this to the grave, is trying to help people that are in that moment you were in when you wanted to pursue that YouTube career and were almost facing burnout because of that struggle. It's the same mission that Jack Conte from Patreon has. Like, how can we help creators succeed with their actual creativity? And I share that backstory and mission a little bit because I feel like one of the best things we can do is talk through what that journey was like and what was difficult about it. So just to go back a little bit to you aspiring to be the PewDiePie of mobile, if you can remember in that 14-year-old mind of yours, like, why do you mention PewDiePie? Like, at the time, was it because you looked up to him as a creator? And like, why did you want to be a YouTuber at that moment?
I've tried to think about this quite a lot, and I think it's just a lot of things falling into place at the right time. I discovered PewDiePie on my last day of school, right before my summer vacations were going to start. And so for the first week, I was just binge watching his content. And I used to enjoy gaming quite a lot, as most young kids do, right? But I was also somebody who was extremely introverted. So for that reason, I looked up to PewDiePie because he seemed to be the kind of person, even though he was introverted, he had gotten out of that and started to be confident on camera. And I aspire to be that way. I aspire to, while staying true to my roots, which is that I'm introverted, I still wanted to be somebody who could be perceived as extroverted when they are around people or when they are doing things like this, which is like creating content. And so that was my initial mission. It was very intrinsically driven. It was for me to get out of my own bubble. And so I think I'm just lucky that I started at such an early age where I didn't have as much insecurity around being introverted, because most people who are introverted, or at least my friends who are introverted, they grow up to be to just not like that fact. And so I was, I think, at an age where I wasn't insecure enough to not start YouTube. And that was, I think, just things happening at the right time, where maybe if it was 2 or 3 years later, I would have just probably not started.
When I interviewed Cody Warner, we talked about that fact that talking to your camera in your basement is probably the most introverted thing you can do that helps you become extroverted. It's a pretty cool thing. It really is. And I'm sure millions of people can probably share a similar goal when it comes to becoming a content creator. I know I certainly can. I often talk about the fact that introversion and extroversion are domain and context specific. You know, you're with a certain group of friends, you're going to be a little more extroverted. You're with a different group of people, you're going to be a little more introverted perhaps, or with different topics, it can even change within this one episode a little bit. Now, when it comes to the actual goal though, and this is again hard to take yourself back in the time machine, but do you remember what your goal was with YouTube? Was it to be as successful as PewDiePie, or did you just want to be able to share your message with the world?
Well, I was too young, I think, to have a message to share. I just wanted to have fun. And yeah, I think just share fun moments with other people, because I saw what PewDiePie was doing. I had seen comments of people saying, like, your videos bring joy to my life and stuff like that. And I think I just wanted to do the same, because I am somebody who likes to do that for other people, but because I am usually very shy in person, I'm not able to help as many people as I think I want to. And so I saw that as a way to be able to just help people brighten up their day, improve their day. And it's a bonus if I'm also able to improve myself as a person in the process.
Pretty powerful in terms of the ability to help ourselves, but also help others, and kind of have that overall mission that ends up changing us as we become more and more creative. So do you feel like you miss or would like to go back to creating more of your own content, or are you just too busy right now?
Well, I go through phases. So there are times when I'm like, for like a month or two, I'm just hyper focused on creating content for myself, whether it's on Twitter, or I recently started YouTube, but I've just been very inconsistent with it because I just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do it like I used to before when I had nothing else going on. And so there are phases where like I said, it's phases. So Q1, I was focused on YouTube and content in general, but right now I'm not. And my video editors are like, when are you going to give us another video? And I'm like, I don't know, bro. And so yeah, it's just I don't miss it as much as I used to, because I'm still involved in doing similar things, and I've found niches where the people I'm working with, they are also having a positive impact on the world. I only work with people that I know are going to help other people. And so it's either like I still have a few clients like Adam Cole, the wrestler, who makes videos that his audience really enjoys and they're just entertaining, or I only work with people who are educating people and helping them improve their lives. So it's usually like business coaches, sales coaches, fitness coaches, or now I'm starting to work with wellness brands, but only wellness brands because I know those are going to have an impact on the world.
It's really cool how you can kind of map all of your own values into a lot of things you do. It's pretty clear, like whether it's the content creation or the way you're building a business and who your clients are, it kind of still achieves those goals that are maybe not like the primary goal of building the business, because obviously that would be bringing in revenue, but being able to have the values embedded in that is pretty awesome. When it comes to niche, I want to circle back to that a little bit, because I mentioned April Lynn, who, switched YouTube channels. You mentioned facing burnout yourself. One of the things that I was hoping would happen when YouTube started getting a little better dashboards for being able to lay out what your videos and playlists are, was that would be solved for a little bit within a channel. Because even if you're creating, let's say, mobile soccer videos or football in your case, or you want to just go create something else, then you could have them playlist specific. This is a bit of a selfish question, because one of the things that I've struggled with for the show is it's kind of an audio first podcast. Traditional podcast, like Dax Shepard even talks about how he'll never go to video as a strategy regardless, because he likes just being able to have the conversation. And there's been 2 guests for me that asked to be audio only. They just prefer to do podcasts in audio. And so I just always say, yes, that's fine. But then YouTube comes out with the ability for RSS feeds to load directly into YouTube, but then the thumbnails and the titles obviously look like crap. And then you're stuck, or a lot of people are stuck wondering, should I just create YouTube videos because they're good, like Casey Neistat style, or as you were sharing, taking hundreds of hours to edit and upload? I would still love to make videos like that, but I'm really busy with the podcast. So how do you advise if people are trying to figure out when they have different niches? Because creating multiple channels just doesn't seem sustainable for a solo creator.
Yeah, well, that's something I have wrestled with for a while, and there is no true solution. But I also think that people get the concept of niche wrong a lot of times. Niche doesn't mean that I'm going to do a podcast for entrepreneurs only. That doesn't have to be the niche. The niche can just be entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs watch and listen to a lot of things. They don't just listen to podcasts. They also they also like business advice, and they would also watch business advice videos that are shorter in nature. They would also watch motivational videos that are shorter in nature. And so the niche can just be a type of person, and you can create content that helps all their needs. And so in that way, you're not really going too broad, and you're able to create different formats and different types of content, but it still cater to a specific kind of person.
And is that what you meant earlier when you said that as long as it has a wide enough appeal?
Yeah. So, for example, let's say I'm creating YouTube videos about how to grow on YouTube. I could at the same time, on the same exact channel, also have a semi-regular podcast. Let's say that's once a month, having guests who are also other YouTube strategists or YouTube coaches or successful YouTubers. And my audience will also like to see that, because they're interested in listening to others, and they're also willing to watch longer form content of 1 or 2 hours. And so the niche for me will then just be people who want to grow on YouTube. And they will also watch short form content. They will also watch general like 10 to 12 minute videos, and they will also watch podcasts. and they may also listen to audio podcasts. They may also consume content on Twitter, and they may also consume content on LinkedIn. So I'm able to appeal to that same audience in every format, and I'm able to cater to needs of different kinds of individuals within that niche without going too specific. Like, I'm only going to create YouTube content on Twitter.
It's one of those difficult to understand things for a lot of people when they first get into online business or content creation, the topic, because one of the things that I'll share with a lot of people who are first getting into it is that I was so stuck with that idea of niche like 5-6 years ago, because when I would bring up that I wanted to talk about learning or career advice or school advice, like the how to learn space, everyone would say, well, that's not niche enough, right? But then when I would think about looking at the examples of creating for stay-at-home moms who want to learn how to cook Italian food between the hours of 7 and 8 p.m. Like, some people had these hyper-focused niches. I was like, I just can't do that, because creatively I'd rather fail than put myself in that box. And I had trouble figuring out the in-between. I really think that I understand it now, similar to how you described it. I always say that our overall niche can be quite global, a topic like I have, but then when we go to create something, like I just finished an email course on how to use grief as fuel for life writing, as a way to heal from that trauma and heal from grief, because a lot of people will ask me naturally on social media, or if they know me in person, about how to deal with grief because of some of my own background. And I just created that whole email course. Well, if I create a landing page for that, it can be really, really specific, but in the overall brand, it's a lot more broad. And so I'm really appreciative of having learned that. I just wish someone like you was there to teach me that like 6 years ago. So when it comes to other tips around marketing or business, this idea of niche versus being a little broader and having a greater appeal. I know that marketing, you mentioned that that's one of the topics you really love and appreciate. What are some other, let's say, mistakes that people make that you think you would help steer them clear of, or you can almost predict that everyone will struggle with when they first get started?
Relating to niche, again, I think one thing that I've seen a lot of people get wrong is, even if they figure out what niche they want to create content about, or even what niche of people they want to create their business for, what they struggle with is having a basic idea of where they want to go, or just how they are going to execute that. And so, at least with content, I see this 100% of the time. It's the biggest mistake most people make, which is not having a strategy or a very basic outline of a game plan. And something like this is important, because when you're starting, of course, you're not going to be good at the thing you're doing. But what you can do is at least spend a couple days looking at what other people have done, so you can incorporate that into your own way of doing things. And when you don't do that, you end up spending a lot of time doing things that you may just not even need to do. For example, when starting a YouTube channel, I see so many people wasting so much time thinking of what logo should I choose? What should my channel name be? What banner should be on my channel? And those are things that literally do not matter at all. Like 0% effective in becoming successful, but it's still something that people think so much about. And when you would if you would spend some time looking at bigger creators, you would realize how meaningless your channel name and channel logo is, because the biggest YouTuber is called Mr. Beast. And so what you should instead spend time doing is seeing what got those people to have the success that they have. And what I do for every single creator I bring on, or every single client that I have, is I spend time researching their target audience, or the target audience that they have in mind at least, and seeing if they are right, that this kind of audience will like this kind of content based on what's already working. You do not have to reinvent the wheel when you start, because you don't really even know what the wheel looks like. And so your focus in the beginning should just be to try to understand what's working for others and see how you can just slightly improve on it and just execute first, because you're going to suck a lot in the beginning, and the only way to suck less is to just do the thing more. The focus in the beginning should just be to do the thing as much as you can so that you stop sucking at it.
Which one of the biggest YouTubers that you mentioned, Mr. Beast, talks about often, the idea of that, just getting your first 100 videos done. And there's no better story. I mean, his story is truly incredible in terms of being able to look back at when he was 12 or 13, 14, putting out those first videos. And like you said, sucking for a very long time. You hopped into kind of YouTube strategy there a little bit. And I know we've kind of talked about most of it really throughout, but it is a pretty deep topic. I saw Roberto Blake post today that YouTube's going to start rolling out the ability to create courses similar to what Spotify just did, and a lot of platforms are trying to basically just have all the features, right? But regardless of the features, one of the requirements of that is monetization. Now, there's a ton of creators who have like 14 subscribers, and I'm sure someone who's a real expert like you would know that you could take somebody from 0 to monetization relatively quickly. But what would be that path in your opinion, or in terms of giving someone advice that, again, we see a lot of mistakes may be made, or that you think people would really need to know? Because that's sort of like this esoteric thing. You have to dig deep into like the Google/YouTube playbook on their website, like to figure out what does that even mean. So when people talk about the ability to get monetized in order to make a course or to start subscriptions or get that first step, what does that even mean? And how would you say someone should go about getting there?
So monetization on YouTube essentially means you reach a certain number in terms of subscribers. You reach, so that subscriber number has been reduced from 1,000 to now it just being 500. But along with that, you also need to fulfill certain other requirements, which is how many hours of content of yours has been watched in the past 12 months. And that one is very important, because let's say you create a lot of content but nobody is watching it, or people are just subscribing and they're not watching your content, which is a mistake that people make. Just ask all their relatives to just subscribe to them. That's not going to fulfill your requirements to get monetized, because you need those people to actually watch your content and repetitively watch it. So you need to fulfill 3,000 hours of watch time. And that may sound like a lot, like 3,000 hours. But it's not when you've created, let's say, 100 videos, and on average people are watching 3 or 4 minutes of it, and there have been 15 or 20,000 people who have watched your videos. You know, it's not a lot, but it does require you to put in that effort of either you just have to be extremely good at the content, so people are going to watch it for longer, or you have to create a lot of content so people are going to watch it for a little bit, but they're going to watch a bunch of those videos for a little bit. And so that's really what the criteria for being monetized on YouTube is. You need those exact numbers to be fulfilled for you to just even be considered. And then on top of that, you have to also ensure that you're not violating certain requirements. Like, you can't be extremely political. You can't be in any way, sexist, racist, or be negative, extremely negative. You can't have too much AI generated content, which is a mistake that a lot of people are making these days. They are using AI to do everything, including voiceovers, including editing. But when you do that, YouTube is not going to monetize you, because they want human content on the platform.
So again, in a selfish kind of I suppose this would be a selfish question that helps other people, kind of like what you talked earlier about creating content in a way that helps you and helps them.
Yeah.
When you share that idea of either being so good at the content that people will watch for long, I think about the fact that one of the skills that I had prior to YouTube even existing was being a good editor. I was using super old school video editing, old school cameras. And even when I was in high school, which is a very, very long time ago, I just loved that. Like the idea of movie making, kind of like how Casey Neistat went to HBO with his first thing. And similar to what you shared earlier about having to go start business and find other means of creating content and building revenue because you have to be able to pay the bills first, I abandoned some of the more purely creative stuff to go, similarly build out this podcast and start building kind of the business behind the brand with the hopes of always going back and creating more of that pure creative piece. So on the far side of that, I have, let's say like this episode we just recorded, I would love to hear your personal opinion. Do I upload that to the channel as just a back and forth talking head? You know exactly what we've done for the last 45 minutes video and have a whole bunch of those because I do an interview a week. So that's a lot of content in the form of just purely interviews, have it as a playlist and only make interviews or make the creatives only and not be uploading these interview videos or kind of do a combination. Given that problem, what insight comes to mind?
Well, so on a platform like YouTube, you want to give people as much content as you can without it being too overwhelming. But with podcasts, the strategy is a little bit different because what you're doing with the podcast is very different from what the typical YouTuber does with their videos. A podcast is completely raw and it's usually something that people consume passively. It's not something they're sitting and watching on their TV or on their laptop, right? It's something that when they're doing something else, they are consuming that content. So YouTube is still not the best platform for that to happen. Because when you go onto YouTube, you're active. You're usually not passive. Whereas YouTube also has other things that they've done like YouTube Music, or now they also have the podcast feature embedded within YouTube, which allows you to be able to, just appeal to that audience natively within YouTube itself. So what I would recommend doing is uploading your podcast for sure, but also make content that caters to the YouTube native viewer who also likes actively consuming content. And so this means having shorter edited pieces, and they don't have to be super edited, but just like shorter pieces that cut out the fluff and only give the value. So that could be a 3-minute segment. Maybe it could just be like the 3-minute segment of me saying what are the requirements for starting a YouTube channel and for being monetized on it, right? So that could just be a 3-minute clip that when somebody is looking for that kind of content, they're able to find it. And they're able to get that condensed piece of information rather than having to watch the whole thing. Because with a podcast, the major issue is that you talk about 100 different things, but when you just look at the title and thumbnail or, wherever it is on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever, when you look at the title and the thumbnail, you're never going to know what those 100 topics are. And so you either have guests that are big enough that people will click no matter what is the title and thumbnail, or you have to make the title and thumbnail so interesting that people have a reason to click. But if you cannot do that either, then you're just better off making shorter pieces of content from that long form content so that people who are looking for a specific topic are able to get that answer. And then you do that in the hopes that they will enjoy that short piece of content so much that they would want to watch the whole piece.
It's beautifully put. And it's something that I first set out as a creator to do, right? Create the big episode, upload the smaller one. And as you know, we can only do so much and kind of these shiny objects and stuff. And let's be honest, that's where working with a brand like you've built and what you're working on can be really helpful. And then it's a catch-22 between being able to afford things. Because I have people 5 times a day trying to get me to sign with them to create content kind of like with a similar strategy. And a lot of time that's in the podcasting space. But you hit the nail on the head in terms of the trouble with titling and search for podcasts, even in audio only. And this is one of those decisions for me that I've had to make. Like, I have to really reflect Rick Rubin style and think, am I making this for the right reasons? And for me, podcasting is because I need to be able to hop all over the place. It can't be like the Oprah Winfrey couch where we have 8 minutes to talk about your new movie that's coming out. I think that can be a piece of the segment, and that goes up on its own, like you're saying. And these are all the long-term goals. But I really appreciate your insight, because what I would be doing in an ideal world would be uploading the full video raw. I personally consume quite a bit of podcasts. Like My First Million, for example. I don't know why, but I don't listen to that on Spotify or Apple or Amazon. I listen on the video version. I don't know what it is about that one show, but when I search for one of their episodes, I watch on YouTube, and I'm not even watching either. It's somewhat passive. But you can always glance over and see the interview. There's something about that people do seem to like. However, I know the value in creating the shorter form content, even the 7 minutes that answers a specific topic. What I'm longing for is the ability to get back to creating my own stuff, which might be like, hey, I'm trying to learn guitar, or I'm trying to learn how to paint shoes, or any of these sorts of learning things. Like, I love the hero's journey of that. That's the type of content that I wanted to create from day one. Kind of Casey Neistat style. It can't be too fast because you're learning something, but it is a video in and of itself. And like what I've seen Dodford do in the last year, being able to create like full production around episodes, that would be a very similar big dream for me. But, you know, we go back to your big dream of creating and being the biggest PewDiePie, the next PewDiePie on mobile. My idea of these learning videos, I'm trying to figure out how to balance those. And I think that's what I have now, is maybe I can do one of those learning ones per month. It's a little more edited, a little more polished for the active viewer, upload these raw, and maybe I can put out some clips as well. That's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, what's your goal with this podcast in general?
When I think of, you know, the bigger dream goals type stuff and the little more kind of meta stuff, it's the idea of having this be something that youth, and when I say youth, you know, that could mean 14 would probably be young, because like this is just super boring. Like my daughter is like, she calls these vlogs for some reason. She's like, your vlogs suck. She's like, your vlogs are boring. But in any case, you know, youth, kind of college age, you know, you and I can both think back to those college years trying to figure out our own pathways. And this becomes kind of like the My First Million, but more comprehensive in the sense that it's not only about business. Like a lot of episodes, like one of the full episodes was on compassion and like crime and stuff. And, you know, that was pretty powerful. It was with Sister Helen Prejean. They made the movie Dead Man Walking after her life. Stuff like that, you know, talk about freelancing. And then all of a sudden someone who's an author will come on to talk about writing books. So it's really in that kind of career advice, guest speakers space. But that's just the content. So maybe people will be inspired or learn from different episodes. What I would like to do from the business sense is just be able to monetize this, whether it's speaking. My main way coming up will probably be the book. We'll see how well it does, but speaking and books and that kind of traditional stuff that was more popular, you know, like 20 years ago, Les Brown and like that kind of stuff. Bob Proctor, you know, going and helping people at conferences and stuff, I think is the best way for me to do this. And the reason I say that is that I've had a lot of really good mentors in the business space. Dave Meltzer, John Lee Dumas, Pat Flynn, like people who really know what they're doing, Jamie Masters. And most of them have created, Stu McLaren's another one. Like they've created, the $1,000, the $2,000 courses. And I think that's a great business model if you're charging someone like me who can afford to go take your course. But my real goal is more, and it might take longer, but catering to people who can't afford that, who still need the help.
Funny you mentioned Dave Meltzer, because I've actually helped him with his YouTube channel a couple months ago.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. I have a similar goal for myself as well. It's just going through different phases of life where previously I was like, I'm going to help entrepreneurs with their YouTube channel so they can help people like the ones you mentioned, which are, those who are starting off in their journey. And so I was using my clients as a way to do that. And I still do the same, but now my focus is more on, I want to help wellness companies and brands just in general improve people's lives, not just in terms of career, but in general improve people's lives. And I want to make more money so I can fund my own project and my own YouTube channels and my own courses, so that I, kind of like the Alex Hormozi thing, which is you don't charge anything, almost nothing for it, so that you're able to help out a lot of people. And that's kind of what I want to do as well. But I know I need to make more money, so I'm in that position where I don't have to charge money to be able to help people.
Right. That's just it. It's exactly it. Very well put. And that's the long-term goal. So we'll just keep supporting each other along that journey. One of the things that I'd like to talk about, speaking of journeys, is you mentioned growing up in the Middle East. You've mentioned college a few times. You mentioned school when you found PewDiePie before the summer. I see in your background it says, about learning and experimenting. What was school like for you growing up in terms of being a learner?
Well, I was naturally pretty good at it. I never found it hard, at least until calculus got involved. I was pretty good at math. And it's because I was able to, and the funniest thing is how I used to study math is nobody can grasp it. I used to just read the textbook. That's it. Like I never practiced. I never paid attention in class. I was just good at grasping concepts. But when things got too complicated, where like calculus, for example, like concepts are just the basic, but then after that being able to apply it got more complicated with time, that's where I struggled. But with anything, with even studying history, studying geography, if I was able to grasp the basic concept of something, I was able to understand it at a core level. And what Elon Musk would call the first principle of things, right? I was able to understand the first principle of it so that I could utilize that thing. And I was therefore good at school for the most part. But there came a time when I started watching Gary Vee, when I realized that the things that I'm learning at school are really not going to help me in life. And this was around the same time when I decided I'm not going to focus so much on school. Let me start doing other things with my life that are actually going to help me for the long term. And I asked my parents to enroll me into karate, and it took me 6 years, and I became a black belt by the time I graduated high school. While at the same time I started doing YouTube, around the same time I started watching Gary Vee. And it's just like I said, a lot of things fell into place at the right time. But after I started getting more engrossed into YouTube, I stopped paying as much attention to my classes as well. Like when I was in school, most memories that I remember are more about my dreams of what I'm going to do for my next video, or like strategizing on what should the title be at the back of my notebook, rather than paying attention in class. And so I think, although I was good at school, I kind of started utilizing those same skills that made me good at school, which is just being able to grasp concepts well. And I was able to focus pretty well. And so I started focusing on other things that I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't want to be one of those who just had nothing else going for them.
That's one of the things that I always find intriguing is when people who are and could be good at kind of the traditional academics also pursue something creative, not necessarily in school, but outside of it, like you did with YouTube. Well, sometimes people do that because they also aren't good in school. And so it's interesting to see when people are, passionate or inspired and motivated enough to go pursue it, even though they probably had other traditional means open to them as well, like in your case. Now, you said that you did go to college as well, though?
Yeah. So I went to uni to study the same field. I did a bachelor's in digital media. And so it was around my creative pursuits. And so this was at the time when I was still doing YouTube and I wasn't making enough money from it to be able to live on my own for sure. So I came to Malaysia to study, and Malaysia is pretty cheap. So that allowed me to be able to, for my parents to be able to afford it pretty easily. And for me to be able to continue just exploring different things and creating content and just learning more video editing and design. And in college, I learned a lot about like just in general photography and videography, and we did like short movies. And so that helped me expand my career more, or expand my knowledge base more, and have more things that I could decently do. So the things that I wanted to do were just, I think, uplifted because I had more general domain expertise in the creative field.
Not to rush through some of the background, because I know we're going to have to wrap relatively soon, and maybe we can do another episode in the future. But it's, we stuck to the niche and business and YouTube stuff quite a bit and discussed those at length, which, like you were saying, it's always tough with podcasts because we can put a title and it's like, I always see that it is valuable though to talk about different things. And one of the things that you mentioned was growing up in the Middle East, and then you've moved. Where did you grow up, and was it common for other people to be getting into video as well?
No. So I was born in India, but I lived in Middle East most of my life. I really don't recall too many other people who got into content creation in general. I had two friends who started YouTube around the same time as me. One of them quit after 2 months, and the other one also quit after like a year or two, but he now works for me. So he's now become a video editor for my agency. And so I'm pretty close with him still. And this was somebody I met 10 years ago, right? So he is happy. We're happy that, he is working with me. But no, other than those two people, really nobody else. So one of them quit within 2 months. The other one quit after a year. But what kept me going, I think, is the community that I started forming. And so for me, I realized this after like 3 or 4 years of just doing FIFA mobile content, that it wasn't that I enjoyed football. It wasn't that I enjoyed FIFA. It was that I enjoyed having people around me who had the same interest, and they wanted to know the same things, and they were curious about the same questions. And so that community was my main motivation to keep going. So it sucked when the community didn't enjoy the content that I made. That's what led me to feel the burnout even more.
That sounds like a mic drop moment right there. I know that we could talk about creating thumbnails and the strategy around titles, and maybe how you now create revenue streams for your business and how you get clients in the door and how you convert clients, and we could talk about sales. I think you're someone who likes books, so we could talk a lot about books. Like it's
Yeah.
it's one of those awesome things that I understand why Rogan can do 3-hour plus episodes. Go take a bathroom break, grab a drink of water, and get going again. But I think that was a pretty special statement that you just made to leave off and also leave people with a bit of a cliffhanger, because we definitely can do this again. That being said, I do think that every podcaster or any interviewer with any confidence at all should always ask if there's anything else. Like if there's anything that you feel like if we wrap right now, you wish you would have mentioned or talked about. Is there anything else?
For sure. There's so many things I could think about. But if, I realized that I never fully answered your question of what would it take to get monetized. And I think I wouldn't want people to feel like they never got that out of this. So I would want to talk about that. This is something that I've started to realize more and more. And I even have it as my wallpaper, is be a student of psychology. That's the first principle for everything you want. And so for me, over the last few months, I've started to dive more into psychology and philosophy, and I just want to learn more about just the motivations of a human being, because I feel like, and Tai Lopez talks about this a lot, that psychology is the fundamental for everything. Every successful person understands human psychology. And so once you understand psychology, you're going to be good at content, you're going to be good at sales, you're going to be good at marketing, you're going to be good at business, you're going to be good at creating good websites, anything that you want to do. And so the thing is, always whether you're creating YouTube videos, whether you're creating, a business, you're selling a product, whatever, especially in the beginning stages, think about what is it that you're doing that is going to actually help people. And this is something like you had mentioned earlier, that there's that YouTube channel with 14 subscribers who's struggling and doesn't know what he or she is doing wrong. And usually the thing they're doing wrong is they don't know what's the benefit of this content to somebody. Because most people, when they start creating content or they start their business, they started with selfish reasons, and they don't think about what is truly the benefit of this thing. And even better if you can find a value proposition for it in one sentence. For example, my current business pursuit, which is, I want to help wellness brands grow their online presence. That in itself, when I just say it in one sentence, you automatically understand exactly who I'm helping and why. Because I know that those wellness brands are going to help more people, thousands of people, change and improve their lives. And so you need to have that 1 or 2 sentence summary for what is it that somebody will get out of this. Get out of this YouTube video, get out of this Twitter post, get out of this Instagram reel. Get out of this product that you're selling. What is the value proposition, the elevator pitch for it?
It's well put. In the world of fiction writing, there's a narrative or story framework called the snowflake method. And the idea is that you start with your characters and your plot, and then you kind of work your way down to a 1-page summary, a 1-paragraph summary, and then you have to come up with that 1-sentence summary, and they should all really sync together, whether your story is tiny and can fit in one Twitter thread, or it's a book that took you 7 years writing every day to create. You should still be able to follow that exact same style of framework to tie it all together. And frankly, that is something that I have struggled with. I think it's mostly conscious, because when I think of a value proposition, I can put it in a sentence. It's just very broad. Like the book that I'll have coming out this fall is on the topic of learning. It's basically taking someone from the beginning of a hero's journey, like I don't know what I want to do with my life, to I have clarity over it, to this is how I can start pursuing it. And it's going to be about 100 1 to 2 page chapters, and it'll be pretty broad. My hope is that in schools it could start to get some word of mouth and people would want it in their schools because kids could read it. Like, it's kind of like teen self-help, basically, which I've seen a lot day to day from youth that I've worked with over the last couple of years. They actually really do love this type of stuff, and they'll pick up stuff like Untamed by Glennon Doyle and Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis, and they'll read those books back to back, even though a lot of times the paragraphs are really long and the chapters are really long, and they would rather them be a bit shorter. So that's like the first book. But the thing about that is that I have so many more niche things in mind to do after that, but I'm starting with like this super broad stuff. I'm basically doing it completely ass backwards to what I would advise anyone else to do. And this channel's the same thing, because as people start to ask me questions, what would be your tips for starting a podcast? I'm like, oh, there's a good video idea. And I could go create that, and that's going to be a lot more niche. Or what are 5 things to keep in mind when you do an interview? Or how do you, like, you know, things that people do ask me all the time. I just don't feel like I have time to answer it because I'm busy making the actual content. So it's this funny catch-22. I appreciate you circling back on that, because maybe I can get them put together where we'll get that path to monetization piece tied into the one from half an hour ago. I do ask some, just 3 rapid fire questions, so to speak. So I'll hop into those and then we can wrap for this time. And like I said, we'll definitely have to run it back in the future. It's been fun creating with you. The first one is one thing that you yourself are learning right now that may be off topic from YouTube or business or marketing, but one thing that you are actively learning right now.
Sales. I've struggled with sales calls in the past, and I want to get better at them, but not in the, hyper salesy way, more in a human way where I want to actually help people, but at the same time only help them so much that they still want to pay me rather than just get off the call and never contact me again.
These are supposed to be rapid fire, and very rarely do I ever talk in between them, but I will have to create some short form content or send you the timestamp in my probably 2 episodes ago with Justin Freestadt. We talked about this for about 15 minutes, I think. 20 years ago, I was setting sales records at a company that I worked at, and I haven't done sales for about 19 years.
Wow.
But we talked about that because I used to have people ask me if I would go speak at sales conferences, things like this. And I'm like, I just really do a good job of the product, and then people tell each other, and then I'm so busy that there's that natural scarcity built into it. I genuinely didn't realize I was good at quote unquote sales, but then having talked back through it on a couple different episodes with Brendan Kane was one, Justin Freestadt for sure. Talking back through that sales process, I realized, oh, there were different things. And to your point, psychology is a big piece of it, maybe, right? The reason I said that about Justin's episode, though, was because he talked exactly about what you just said about not wanting to be too salesy, and how you'll see people like maybe a Grant Cardone or different type sales people, that higher pressure sales, and a lot of people will believe that that's the way it's supposed to be. But as he explains in the episode and talks about, that there is a whole other way that's not any less successful. It can be very successful. And the other resource, are you familiar with, I mentioned Chris Lockheed earlier, but Category Pirates?
No.
So there's a book called The 22 Laws of Category Design. Their work is really helpful as well, in the sense of creating, it's like, the blue ocean kind of advice was, whereas like find your blue ocean, except for this is more about doing the hard work of not competing with anyone, because you're creating that category space that you created, so you're the only person there. It's a really interesting thing. It's like obviously a lot more information, but he talks a lot about the same kind of thing of never having to be this sleazy salesman while still being super successful at sales.
Okay.
And then so the other one is, again, it can be completely away from this. It could just be whatever comes to mind. You know, you think back to that 14-year-old you sitting there. If you were to give one piece of advice to the next generation, what would it be?
Start something when you're in school, because life gets busier as you progress through it. When you get a job, especially, you're not going to have the time that you did back in school and back in college. So start something in school and college that may or may not end up becoming an opportunity for you in the future, but start something.
I wish I did, that's for sure. Yeah, I wish I did. Oh, if you were to ask me a question, you take the interview chair and the interviewer chair, and you ask me a question, what would be a question that you would ask me?
I think it's going to be something that, like you said, something that's personal, but it's also going to help other people. If you were in my shoes of somebody who is kind of switching their paths a little bit, right? I'm going from a different agency model to now completely switching to helping brands and companies, which comes with its whole set of new problems and complications. Would you say there, what would you say would be one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's kind of switching their paths a little bit?
I shared both resources earlier, and one was Cal Newport's Slow Productivity, and the other was The One Thing. If it were in general, and I hadn't necessarily shared those already, I feel like I would be sure to tell them that I've learned the hard way, and I've seen so many other people learn the hard way, that especially when we're making a big change, that focus and being very specific in where you're spending your kind of Pareto's principle of 80-20 is so important, especially in the beginning, because if you can figure out what's having the greatest impact, and you can have the patience is a weird word, because it's like just day to day having the ability to stick to the plan. Stephen Pressfield talks about turning pro. If you can turn pro with it and really stick to the plan because you already know and have identified what works best, that's definitely a really underrated first step. Cal Newport's Slow Productivity specifically, I think, is a controversial area, because you mentioned Gary Vee. I'm a big fan too. I've got my V Friends cards in the background here. The idea of having to be across platforms and creating a ton of content because a video could go viral, or we could have a life-changing moment any day when we don't know, is less of a guarantee than actually just working on the thing that is guaranteed to succeed, but you have to continue to find and create and dedicate specific periods of time to that. And so when I think of that, I think of like the longer form blog posts, or writing a book, or creating those videos that you said take 100 or 200 hours. What are those? What's the most valuable part of the change for you? And so then to go a little more specific, well, let's stay general for one last second, because another thing that I see people struggle with, myself included, but I've gotten a lot better at it, is the foundation to all of this is wellness. And for you, it's a really interesting thing because you want to help wellness brands. Underlying wellness is being able to sleep and have self-care and, to the best of your ability, some nutrition, and maybe going for a walk, getting time in nature, perhaps some exercise, all these things that everyone could do and we all have enough time to do, but we end up setting them aside to pursue the business and creator goals, thinking that we'll get back around to that. And I feel like that's something that I've quite proven to myself and seen a lot of other people prove, that when you flip those and you actually do make it the foundation again, good things start happening on top of that. And the third thing that goes a little more specific to you is it sounds like maybe there'll be more and more B2B opportunities, which I don't know if you create a lot on LinkedIn or if you're mostly
starting it.
Yeah, so it's hard when, even for Gary Vee, I think about this a lot over the years. He'll give advice on like a tea with V or some kind of opportunity when someone's fortunate enough to have 10 minutes of his time. And I've seen it in person at VCon, because being there, they just went to the first one, but being there, you see him in the hallway being able to give advice for 6 minutes, and he gives awesome, incredible advice, but there's no ability to follow up ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's why one of the things he should say to everybody is, and I'm sure he would stand by this advice, is continue to test it. And if it's not working, experiment somewhere else. And that's why advice like this is so hard. Because I'm sure creating content on LinkedIn that shows the value that you bring to the people you work with would be one of the most valuable content spaces to share stories and stuff. I don't know. I could go on forever. Like, we could do the opposite hour. Yeah, hopefully that's a little bit helpful for people, and maybe they can ask follow-up questions.
For me, the biggest takeaway from here was, from what you just said, is making health and wellness not just a priority, but the base. And that's something that I struggle with, like you mentioned. I think most people like us do, which is we get so engrossed in the thing that we want to do that we always set it aside. And making it a priority, and I've seen a lot of successful people around me, like hyper successful people, they always make fitness, especially fitness and nutrition, a high priority. Whether they sleep well or not, they exercise, they eat healthy no matter what happens. And I think that discipline does seep into everything else that you do, because it sets a certain standard for who you are and who you want to be. Agreed.
And I've always known that for 30 years, yet I've often strayed from doing it. And right now is a very micro example, because it's pretty late for me, my time. And after this, I'll be tempted to create some content, or, already start editing a little bit, or so many things on my to-do list. I have to say to myself, okay, I'm going to have a glass of water. I'm going to read a little bit, and I'm going to go to bed, and tomorrow I can start fresh. One of the other things too that I just thought of, this is very specific to you. I don't like to do a lot of research for these episodes, because, and that's funny, because maybe some people might see it as lazy and they just perhaps don't understand, but I have no problem doing research afterwards. But I love to be a little more surprised and learn things as I go. The same as like I'm sitting at a bus stop with you and we're chatting for the first time ever.
I love that.
It's tricky because there has to be a bit of a balance, right? Like if you're not interviewing someone who can carry a bit of a conversation, or knows to tell a story here or there, or has a clear brand like you do, then it's hard, because like you could be 20 minutes in and be like, oh shit, and it's like you're kind of stuck. Now, I haven't really been in that situation because I'm so busy with people wanting to be on the show and stuff anyways, so I just always have great guests. But I don't know if, do you have, whether it's in your, well, let me ask first for clarification. When you said that when you're pivoting to do the wellness piece, is that within your Viralize, like within the company brand, or are you talking more like your personal brand stuff?
More of the company brand.
That's what I figured. So does your company have an email course that people could take?
No.
But do you have an email list, like even a small one?
No.
Okay, well, never mind. That's the first piece. This is something that I've been pretty bullish on in the last year. And it's not a new thing. I mean, people have been doing it successfully for 20 years. And it's like always the advice that I feel similar to the advice you would give people to starting on YouTube that, oh, you should start an email list, and you feel a little bit behind because I remember in 2020, I had, it was Stu McLaren saying, you know, you should really start your email list, but you don't have to wait to start your email list to start your membership. This was back when I built a membership site. And I was like, okay, cool. I completely messed that up because instead of starting the email list and the membership site, I just started the membership site. I still lost, like I thought, well, I'm too far behind. Everyone has these big email lists. Now I see people growing them like in the last year or two. And I was like, shit, that was 4 years ago that I could have been started on this, and I didn't really. So I've done a bit of a better job in the last year. But more so, my freelance version has been helping people with email courses. And so I don't talk about that much publicly. There's one company right now that I'm creating all their email courses for them. And I don't really have a lot more time, but that is one of those things that as I've done it more, I've started to realize how it doesn't need to take a lot of time, but could potentially have a very high impact. And maybe because yours is YouTube specific, I know Ali Abdal has a really good one that it's like 7 days to start your YouTube channel or whatever. Whatever that problem is that you solve for the wellness brand, the 5-day teaser of that in an email course could be written in like, less than, I don't know, if you do a good job, 20 hours. But like, so I'm sure some people are spinning out email courses in 2 hours as well using AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's something that in the future, I don't know if you've ever heard, the person I learned this from was Justin Welsh talks about doing a 30 for 30. If you ever want to do that, we could hop on a call and could help you with an email course if you wanted.
Cool. Well, everybody has given me the advice of starting an email list at least, but I've always been, I enjoy video, and so I don't enjoy the written word as much, at least. And I know I will not be consistent with it if I do. So when I do start, and it's something that I've thought of doing, but when I do start, I think it has to be like, I'm not going to be the one writing. Instead, what I would prefer doing is I create it in video format, but use either AI or somebody else just takes that video format to then convert it into written format.
Yeah, just to clarify for your sake, in case we don't do that 30 for 30 soon, because I know we're both really busy, but I feel like in your case specifically, what I meant was just a standalone email course. So maybe you don't maintain the newsletter, but if you really hit it out of the park with that one email course, your list can grow forever without engaging them as an ongoing newsletter per se. Now, if you were talking to someone like John Meese right now, or someone who, anyone like from ConvertKit or something, they'd probably be saying, keep emailing your list. And of course, that's like the big version of it and what everyone's talking about. But I think what's often missed is it's like, another example of this. Actually, you and I talked about this in DMs before, because what I was asking you about was if you had a podcast. The reason, and what I was going to say, that it's fun that this is coming up now because I would have forgotten, was a lot of people think about podcasts and they think of this, right? Which again, I feel if I knew then what I know now, maybe I would have done things differently, but that's what life is all about. One thing that people don't think about, and Rachel Rogers has a really good example right now on Audible. It's like 8 episodes. It's like a Netflix series, right? Like 8 episodes of I will teach you to build your business. And that's it. It's never going to be the 9th episode. It's a standalone podcast. So this is what I see the email when I say the newsletter. I don't mean so much because you're going to maintain and be emailing them as much as people get to your landing page. Hey, have you ever thought of, and then whatever your proposal is, essentially, what the reason for them building YouTube as a wellness brand is, here are 5 things that you should do to successfully achieve that for your company, for your wellness company. You'll get an email on Monday, and Monday will say this, Tuesday will say this, whatever. And then that goes out. So the company I'm doing this for right now, it's a pretty broad thing like Skillshare, and they create courses that help people learn things like how to paint and how to be a wedding photographer and how to do nice hand lettering and how to crochet and creative pursuits. That's a very broad topic though. So we started with one email course, and it basically helps people regain their creative confidence in 5 days. So every day for 5 days. But then the next thing I'm going to do is take one of those niches like wedding photography and create the email course for wedding photographers. That'll be a 5-day thing. So the way I see it is each of your 5 days, there's also a link at the bottom to whatever your best client recruitment step is, right? Yeah, case study or whatever converts best for you to whatever the next step is for them, want to learn more or want to book a call or want to pay me here, like whatever that part can change. And that's what's fun about these is the email course could stay the same for the next 4 years, but you can always change what you embed at the bottom of that. Check out our website here or whatever.
That makes a lot of sense. Never thought about that, honestly.
Yeah, and you don't need to touch it again after the one project. You could, of course, but it could also be something that you just share with people when they're sort of not ready to be clients, that gives them that little win. Sorry, last thing, because I know it'll help. You mentioned video. So that's exactly what I see too, is on the Monday that goes out, it can link to the unlisted YouTube video on Monday, unlisted YouTube video on Tuesday. So you're still engaging in video format. They're just getting one each day for 5 days. And maybe, hopefully, by the end of 5 days, they become a client or find some way to support the brand. That's the idea I see of those. So like I said, I finished one on grief. Probably one of the next ones that I'll do is probably on how to podcast, like my version of that in 5 days. Yeah. Anyhow.
That's some awesome advice, by the way.
Appreciate that. Those are fun. We could talk about the nuances, of course, about creating them and kind of the curriculum and how to split it up and all that, because that does get into the kind of the writing stuff if you end up writing them. But like I said, literally it could just be videos. You're going to get one video a day for 5 days in your inbox that teaches you how to, and then that's the tricky part. What are they learning? So in any case, appreciate you taking the time to do this. And as always, I just like to ask people where and maybe even why. This will be a good test. Why and where people can find your work online.
Yeah, so there are two places I'm currently the most active. One of them is Twitter, or X, and it's my full name, so that's Mihir Narula, MIHIR.NARULA, and on YouTube it's the same, just without the dot, so that's Mihir Narula on YouTube. On both places I talk about YouTube growth specifically, but on Twitter or X, I talk in general about marketing and business as well, but still it's more so YouTube growth focused and YouTube strategy focused.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it. It's been fun. And like I said, we'll have to do another one sometime.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to the next one too. This was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I have one last question for you. If you could make any video right now, though, just on the pure creative side, what would you go make?
Ooh. So my business partner a couple days ago made a video, and it's him trying to run a marathon from never having run one to trying to run a 10-kilometer marathon using AI as his trainer.
That's interesting.
I think I want to do something similar, but for speaking on stage in front of, let's say, 1,000 people. So using AI as a coach to train me to speak on stage in front of 1,000 people from somebody who's never done that before.
AI is a broad topic. So is that ChatGPT?
Yeah, let's say ChatGPT. But really any written word AI can just give you general tips at least.
Yeah. That's the exact type of content that I want to make, right? That's when I say that, those learning videos, that's exactly that kind of story arc. Did your friend post it already?
No, he's just thinking of the thumbnail and the title right now.
Does the video exist though?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's done the video though.
Yeah.
Do you know what the time window was to try and go from like
10
did
days.
it 10 days to so he didn't run and then in 10 days he was going to run a 10K? Is that what you said? Wow. That's tricky. That's fun though. That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. And like I said, look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day. A great night, rather.
Yeah. Thanks. You as well.